Welcome to video number 48 of 50. I'm Rick Miracle, and I've been doing a series called Freemasonry and Satanism. And I'm almost to the finish line. 50 videos, covering about 75 books and other documents and hundreds of photos. Today's book is by one of my heroes in archaeology, and even one who is thinking outside the box. The Gold of the Gods. Erich Von Daniken, a well-known author, researcher, archaeologist. And I think he has there's a lot in this book that's applicable to the conversations I've been having on the different topics, ranging from remote viewing, the Illuminati, conspiracy theories, religion, psychic research. Just somehow this book's going to put some of the pieces together. So I think it's worthwhile if we go over this. I'm going to bounce around a little bit on a couple topics that are applicable to what Erich Von Daniken talks about. Chariots of the Gods, gods from outer space. With that said, I am noticing in the world, September 2014, lately, interesting events have been happening at a faster rate and a more concerning rate. And I think the issue is, is it this or is it that? What's going on in the United States, the Middle East, the Ukraine, the economy, sky spraying, global warming, overpopulation, pollution, and lots of other chaos and anarchy, which I believe, and probably can have proven in my videos, that a lot of it is planned and manipulated by those behind the scenes. And according to this book, there have been entities behind the scenes throughout history, as far back at least from Atlantis, which there'll be some of that in this book. And the million-dollar question, the thing that confuses people, is the reality of reality. We have a materialistic reality. Me sitting in this chair. You sitting where you are watching this video. And then you have a spiritual reality. Remote viewing, psychic research, Kabbalah, Freemasons into the occult, Hollywood into the occult. Gene Roddenberry, Star Trek creator, as I've said in my videos, said that he went into trances, meditation, and got his storylines from the other side. So now when I go watch Star Trek, the old series, the original series, I can see it. And if you go and watch them, you can see two distinct characteristics. One, they visit other planets with other people. Two, there's entities that can inhabit people, can be invisible, have magical powers, a spiritual reality. So throughout the Star Trek series, you see the two different realities. Anyways, with that said, let me start reading this book and try to make some points out of some of Erich Von Daniken's, put my little tabs on there as usual, and highlighted a lot of stuff. So here we go. I'm just going to read my highlighted sentences and paragraphs. I was carrying out research into the folklore and the ethnology and linguistic aspects of the Ecuadorian tribes. stone and metal objects of different sizes and colors, metal plaques, leaves engraved with signs and writings. So you got stone and metal objects and metal plaques that have signs on them and writing. And I've been to Mexico, down in the Yucatan, the Mayan area, at least a dozen times. Visited Tulum, the ruins, and have a lot of the tourist information, the pamphlets, the books. And one of the dark secrets about the Yucatan, and including a lot of South America and North America and the world, but particularly in this area, was the ancient religions and the history, and that they were into sacrificing people to the gods. Gods from outer space, sacrificing people to the gods. What does that have to do with 2014 September? More than you know. Okay, here we go. Moritz stumbled on an underground passage. Moritz was a citizen of Ecuador, and he discovered an underground passage in June 1965 during his research work, in which he was assisted by Peruvian Indians who acted as skillful intermediaries between him and their tricky fellow tribesmen. I first met Juan Moritz on 4 March 1972. That would have been Erich Von Daniken. And again, I'm only reading my highlighted parts, so get the book if you find this interesting. I find it fascinating. And Moritz invited me to visit the caves. So Moritz discovered the caves, and Erich Von Daniken was following him in his work. And here's a picture of them. Erich Von Daniken with John Moritz, the discoverer of the caves in front of the side entrance to the mysterious underworld. There's the key, mysterious underworld. The entrance, cut in the rock and wide as a barn door, is situated in the province of Marana, Santiago, in the triangle formed by Gualacusi, San Antonio, and Yupi, a region inhabited by hostile Indians in Ecuador. Here's one of the pictures of the cave. This is fascinating when you start to get into this. Then our visit to the age-old underworld of a strange unknown race really began. The passages all form perfect right angles. Sometimes they are narrow, sometimes wide. The walls are smooth and often seem to be polished. The ceilings are flat and at times look as if they've been covered with a kind of a glaze. Obviously, these passages did not originate from natural causes. They look more like contemporary air raid shelters. So apparently when they were glazed and flat, even the ceilings, they weren't chiseled, and this is thousands of years ago, with hammers or anything like that. Apparently, the theory is they were like a laser beam, something that melted the granite rock. Alright, here we go. I'd like to see the archaeologists with the nerve to tell me that this work was done with hand axes. Moritz said the passages like those through which we were going extended for hundreds of miles under the soil of Ecuador and Peru. Contemplate that. Gigantic caves. We're talking the Andes, 10,000 feet up. Hundreds of miles, extending storerooms, cascading all the way down to the ocean, like a passageway. Under the ocean over to a faraway island, so it said. Who did it? We stood at the entrance to the hall as big as the hangar of a jumbo jet. So inside this mountain, down into the ground, you could have parked a jumbo jet. It could have been a distribution center or a storeroom, I thought. Galleries leading in different directions branched off it. It's no use. I tried to use my compass. There is radiation down here that makes it impossible to get a compass bearing. This nameless hall into which the seventh passage leads is intimidatingly large, but very beautiful and nobly proportioned. We were told that the ground plan measures 153 by 64 yards. So that's like 700, 800 feet by 6, 7, 800 feet. Wow, 800, that's 5 or 6 houses. There was a table in the middle of the room, and it was made out of stone. Stone chairs, but they didn't have the feeling of stone. They felt like some kind of manufactured plastic. And they would have never lasted if they were wood for thousands of years. They were as hard and heavy as steel. There were animals behind the chairs: saurians, elephants, lions, crocodiles, jaguars, camels, bears, monkeys, bison, and wolves, with snails and crabs crawling about between them. Apparently they had been cast in molds, and there was no logical sequence to their arrangement. So all these animal statues were cast in molds, and this stuff goes back 6,000, 12,000 years, to the period possibly of Atlantis, down in Ecuador and Peru. They simply stood there peacefully as if the laws of nature did not apply. The whole thing was like a fantastic zoo. What is more, all the animals were made of solid gold. Can you imagine? Also in this hall was the most precious treasure of all, the metal library mentioned in the notarial title deed, although I could never have guessed what it was really like from reading about it. So they have precious treasure, which was a metal library. So they had these metal plates, gold plates, all shapes and sizes, with all kinds of information in hieroglyphic or Sanskrit, different languages. The library of metal plaques was opposite the zoo. To the left of the conference table, it consisted partly of actual plaques and partly of metal leaves only millimeters thick. Most of them measured about 3 foot 2 inches by 1 foot 7 inches. So 3 feet high by 1.5 feet wide. Metal gold plates. Plaques. It must have been unusual, for the leaves stood upright without buckling in spite of their size. So 3 by 1.5 wide, 3 feet high. Each leaf had a writing on it, stamped and printed regularly as if by a machine. So far, Moritz had not managed to count the pages of his metal library, but I accept his estimate that there may be 2,000 or 3,000 gold, 3 feet high, 1.5 feet wide plaques with writing on it in Ecuador, in these underground caves. The characters on the metal plates are unknown. No matter who the creator of this library was, nor when he lived, this great unknown was not only master of a technique for the mass production of metal folios in vast numbers. The proof is there. He also had written characters with which he wanted to convey important information to beings in the distant future. So hang with me on this video, because this is going to be very applicable to our future. Maybe they're talking to us, to you, to me. The Meadow Library was created to outlast the ages, to remain legible for eternity. Do not the high priest of all religions ultimately abhor revelations about prehistory that might replace belief in the creation by knowledge of the creation? So you take the Catholic Church, Jewish religion, Islam, Muslims, even India, Hindu, Buddhism, and you try to go to China and tell them something different than their religion, and they will shut you up. Anybody will. Nobody wants to accept change, new information, to restructure the thinking process the way they had been raised, the way their parents had been raised, their grandparents had been raised. But I feel today, 2014, September, we'd better wake up. The walls and passages of the tunnel system were bare. There were no paintings like those in the deep burial chambers of the Valley of the Kings near Luxor. No reliefs of the kind found in prehistoric caves at sites all over the world. Instead, there were stone figures which we bumped into at every step. Moritz owns a stone amulet 4.5 inches high, almost as big as your hand, or a little smaller than your hand, 2.5 inches wide, and the amulet is dated between 9,000 and 4,000 BC. So Jesus Christ was 2,000 years ago, and known history goes back about 4,000 years. And then they say the Atlanteans goes back about 15,000 before the flood. And here's what it looks like. There's a man standing there on us, obviously looks like the planet Earth. See the lines and the grids? The sun in his hand. So some entity, some thing, some person, some alien drew that. The figure holds the moon in its right hand and the sun in its left hand. Now there's where we start to get to some very interesting information. The moon and the sun. If you've been watching my previous videos, and we look at everything from New Age to Rosicrucian to Satanism to witchcraft, occultism, all of it, the moon and the sun is represented all the time, over and over. That's one of the metal, on the cover of this book, that's one of the metal figures. 3.5 feet high, 1.5 feet wide. You can see the sun on it. The snake. Snake's going to figure largely in this. The sun's rays are a helmet on his head. Without any doubt, this stone amulet found in the tunnels seemed to be proof that they were already in existence in the Middle Paleolithic era, 9,000 to 4,000 BC before Christ. So, known history goes back at least 4,000 years, 6,000 years probably can be rationalized. When you get past that, then we're talking about the era of the Great Cataclysm, the flood, chaos. Something happened on Earth. Alright, in the cave they have an engraving of a prehistoric dinosaur, but there's something wrong with this picture to what we know about history, because that would have been 135,000 years ago. So here's one of the pictures of the cave of a dinosaur. Things are not what they seem. And again, the problem is that in all my videos and what we have going on today with the Kabbalah, the Freemasons, the degrees, the education, ISIS, people they say that are the threat to the United States, and nuclear war looming, it seems, crashing the dollar, plagues, comets supposedly threatening to hit Earth, Yellowstone Park, the Ecuador, the underground volcano they say that might explode. There's many more other threats, pollution, overpopulation. So somebody has to ask some questions. Why all this propaganda? Why all this fear-mongering? I simply ask this question. What intelligent, thinking being ever saw a Caesarian? Alright, here we go. In an office, I beg your pardon, a square stone room. Moritz showed me a dome. Figures with dark faces stood like guards around its circumference. They had hats on their heads, held spear-like objects in their hands as if they were ready to defend themselves. Figures flew and floated up through the air into the top of the dome. So there was this dome they found in the caves. And like I continue to say, you can go online and buy this book. Used book sites are probably new editions of new. I actually learnt at school that the Pantheon in Rome, built in Hadrian's reign between 120 AD after Christ and 125, was the first dome. So less than 2,000 years ago was the first dome. Here he's got them in the caves here. Goes back 6,000, who knows further back. Years. But from now on, I shall consider this piece of stonework to be the oldest example of a dome. Other remarkable features were the spacesuit accessories. On the suit were the gnome wore, and the gloves. So there were these human entity-like creatures, gnomes, who seemed to have a suit and gloves in which his fingers were well protected against dangerous contacts. So it seems like you have some kind of suit on these creatures. I would not have paid any attention to the winged mother figure, between whose arms knelt a slit-eyed child in a crashed helmet. Slit-eyed child. Haven't we talked in these videos about reptilians, slit-eyed, shapeshifters? That would be something serpentine-like. If I had not seen the identical figure, though in clay, during a visit to the American Museum in Madrid. So we've seen the same kind of creature in Madrid, Spain, with slit-eyed child in a helmet. Among many other things, they will mention the 6-foot-high stonemason's work represented beings with 3 and 7 heads. Now we're getting into biblical and other ancient descriptions from all over the world. The Medusa with the snakes on the head. The triangle plaques with writing on them, as if school children had been making their first attempts at writing. No one knows who built the tunnels. No one knows the sculptors who left behind these strange, ambiguous works. Page 17. So far, the entrance of this underground treasure trove of human history is known only to a few trustworthy people. It is guarded by a wild Indian tribe, and this book was published, First published in 1973. So we're not talking very far back. And a lot was going on during the 1960s and 70s having to do with the New World Order, which is apparently a return to the religion of sun god worship, which is another name for satanic Lucifer, Ra, Osiris, Iris, and Horus, which is represented on the dollar bill and the pyramid of Egyptian pagan religion. So this book, this information, this video, number 48, is quite applicable to everything we've been talking about. Indians lurk unseen in the undergrowth and watch every movement made by strangers. 1973. I wouldn't go down there and try to get in these caves and get the gold. Indiana Jones style, you might think you might be. Methinks not. Once a year at the beginning of spring on 21 March, the chieftain climbs down alone to the first platform in the underworld to offer ritual prayers. March 21. Wouldn't that be an equinox? You know, the sun in the winter goes all the way this way, and then in the summer, those are solstices. But the halfway mark is the equinox, which is around March 21. That's when the witchcraft and the occultic and the Rosicrucians and all the other cults do their rituals. Sacrificing people to death, abducting children all over the world to have sacrifices, even today in 2014. That's why it's important for us to all think and get our heads clear about what's going on in the world today. To this day, the tribe of the Tunnel Guardians still make masks and carvings of the men with long noses, gas masks, and they tell, as Moritz knows, of heroic deeds of the flying beings who once came from heaven. In the Bible it says, the gods from heaven found the planet Earth human being, women, fair, good-looking, attractive, and they mated with them. And the offspring were a lot of the creatures that are described in the Bible and other texts. The DNA from the entities from above mating with the DNA of humans. And if you don't know, Atlantis, when it was going through its chaotic period, and the lands were sinking and being disturbed, a lot of them made their way, to my opinion and my research, to Central America, South America, North America, and over in the European continent and Africa. But specifically, as the story goes, in Egypt, when they went there, they were into hybrid creation of people. A lot of our mythology, half man, half horse, and so forth. And it freaked out the Egyptians, and there were some serious fighting and battling. And the Atlanteans had to cease and desist the cloning and the stuff that apparently our scientists are doing today. And that video that we discussed a couple videos back, where Hitler in his diary wrote that they had abducted a young man in Munich and were sacrificing him while a young lady of the cult laid on a slab to bring forth a spirit entity to impregnate the young girl to bring forth the new master race. No lie. Look at my past videos. So again, something interesting is here. So anyways, no, they said to Moritz, spirits live down there. So apparently these Indians guarding these tunnels won't go down there because spirits live down there. Today I know the biggest gold treasure from the dark tunnels is not on show in South America museums. It lies in the back patio of the Church of Maria Auxiliadora at Cunasa in Ecuador, some 8,000 feet above sea level. So Father Crispy has a lot of these golden pieces of art on his back patio. Pay attention to the pyramid. And I keep saying, this is today that we're talking about. Look at that pyramid. Go look at a dollar bill. There's an eye on the top of this pyramid. Go look at a dollar bill. Tell me there's not some mysterious connection here. Probably would bode well for us humans today to pay attention to this. Room 1 houses stonemasons' work. Room 2 houses Inca artifacts of gold, silver, copper, and brass. While Room 3, Father Crispy led us through his treasure chambers. Held gold treasure, which he very seldom shows to anyone, and then unwillingly. So down here in Ecuador, Father Crispy has all this stuff on his back patio. Whoever made this gold steel used a code in alphabet, 56 letters or symbols, arranged to form writing. Father Crispy put a heavy gold plaque in front of the camera. These three creatures, holding a tall tablet with some signs on it, stared at me. The pairs of eyes looked as if they were peering behind goggles. The upper left-hand monster pointed to a sphere. The right-hand one was clad from head to foot in an overall, which was fastened at the sides. Proudly wore a three-cornered star on his head. Above the tablet, with signs, floated two winged spheres. What were the monsters holding? Show you some of the things there. That's all gold. I like to collect old books, different kinds of books. Look at the symbols on these things. Ecuador. It's nice that they put these color pictures in the book. All right. Moving on, page 22. No one can deny that snakes and dragons have a special place in all the myths about creation. Why does the dragon motif play such an important part of the figurative representations and myths of ancient Chinese, Indians, Babylonian, Egyptians, Jews, Germans, and Mayans? Why? Why do they have these 6,000 to 12,000, 15,000 or years older pyramids with an all-seeing eye in Ecuador, made out of gold, in caves, and on the dollar bill? Why is Washington, D.C. designed like an owl, Moloch, while meanwhile, in Bohemia Grove, California, we have presidents and other high officials photographed there, and they wear long robes and do satanic rituals, probably around March here, 21st, the satanic holiday, and bring in gay men to do something with. And then they throw a baby in a burning fire under a gigantic owl. And Washington, D.C. is designed like a gigantic owl. And that would be the demon god Moloch, which recently I saw a video on YouTube where Moloch is the entity that is supposedly returned to Earth and apparently has been, I guess they had a ritual anointing him the new god of Africa. Strange goings on in the world right now. Maybe this information has some relevance. Alright, okay. In her answer, Dr. Sanger Britt thinks it's probable that the snake and dragon symbols must have some connection with the creation and the universe. You think? Adam and Eve, the snake in the garden? Even the pharaohs of Egypt have the big snake on the head. All the artwork has snakes everywhere. Is it a compliment to call a person a snake? No. Phoenicians and Egyptians raised snakes and dragons to the Godhead, and that the snake belongs to the element of fire, because in it there is a speed which nothing can exceed because of its breath. The first and highest divinity is the snake with the sparrow-hawked head. When it opens its eyes, it fills the whole of a newly created world with light. When it shuts them, the darkness spreads over everything. I suppose we should pay attention to that. But why have snakes so persistently made their home in all the creation stories and myths? The unknown, gleaming metal thing that landed or took off, snorting and smelling, kicking up a din, was obviously not a bird. So they described what they had seen. This is in the ancient descriptions. Using current ideas as a thing like a dragon. So let's say they saw a UFO land and take off. Or like a great gleaming bird. Because it was so far beyond their comprehension as a feathered, fire-breathing serpent. Horrified by what they had experienced, fathers told their sons, and they told their grandsons for centuries and millennia about the terrifying apparition of the dragon or the snake. So they're talking about probability of alien cosmonauts coming to Earth. There are countless snakes on the gold plaques in the tunnels underneath Ecuador and Peru. And our Father Crispy's treasures, snakes crawling up pyramids, striving for the summits, flying into the heavens with a trail of fire, or lying on the heads of the gods. The snake was a symbol of immortality. Why? Because our observant ancestors had noticed that the reptile shed its skin and constantly emerged from it renewed. Prehistoric evidence shows that snakes and dragons are connected with the creation of man. That snakes and dragons are connected with the stars, that snakes can fly, that snakes have an unpleasant, fiery breath. Okay, and again, I'm only reading my highlighted information here. I'm not reading everything. Page 26, you need to probably get this book. These concentric circles, actually a large dot inside a circle, are not only found here at Cunicia, but in all kinds of prehistoric cave paintings and reliefs. So the stuff they found in the caves of Ecuador, the designs they found all over the world in ancient art and history. What I mean cannot be more graphically depicted than in the cave painting which was discovered in the Kimberley Ranges, Australia, and the god's halo symbolized in the sun. This is one found in Australia. So, again, getting back to my conversation about aliens, demons, Hitler calling forth an alien when they sacrifice somebody, the Mayans sacrificing people, sun worship. And today I was watching a video on the, or reading an article on the internet, and apparently the ex-Prime Minister of Israel, Shamans, forget his name, the one that's just stepped down, Perez, has met with the Pope in the last 60 days 3 times, and they're talking about creating a United Nations of religions. They're trying to bring us the New World Order, the stuff in the Bible, the 666, the computer monitoring of everybody. And to bring this about, chaos and anarchy seems what they're going to bring to us, to crash the world, so that we will be so freaked out and so stressed out and so over it that we will accept their new one world religion which I don't believe, according to my understanding as a young man going to church, is a good thing. Archaeologists have dug up elephants' bones in North America and Mexico, but they were dated before 12,000 BC. But elephants had completely disappeared from the scene in South America in the age of the Incas, whose culture it is established began around 1200 AD. So we must make a choice. Either the Incas had received a visitor from Africa who drew elephants on the pyramids for them, or these gold plaques are more than 14,000 years old. So one way or the other, how did those elephants in South America get on those gold plaques? Unless somebody came from Africa, or they're just so old that Africa and South America had elephants. They have the same pyramidical shapes as those in Egypt, the gold plaques. Could it be that all pyramids everywhere in the world had the same master builders? I'm thinking yes. I've seen 3 prehistoric model aircraft of ultra-modern design. This is Erich Von Daniken speaking. Anyone who travels to Colombia can see the first one, figure 14, shown in the State Bank of Bogota, Colombia. The gold model State Bank of Bogota. The second is naturally owned by Father Crispy. He has one. And the third still lies 780 feet below the ground at San Moritz's tunnels. This gold spear came to be in Turkey. (7,500 miles from Ecuador). This find, carved out of stone, is on show in the Turkish Museum, Istanbul. It is the negative of the gold sphere at Father Crispy's treasure. The same spear, the same notched pattern on the encircling rim. So that gold sphere we saw in Istanbul is another one made out of stone that's identical. So, the curious question is, do they make a stone artifact and then they put the sheet of gold on it and hammer it out to have the shape? How did one get in Turkey, and the other one down in the caves in Ecuador? At Cuenca, I photographed a gold object some 20 inches high, representing a figure of normal human dimensions. An abnormal feature is that he has only 4 fingers on each hand and 4 toes on each foot. Are we talking about aliens, or are we talking about interdimensional beings? Star-like points surround the god's happy face that can be seen too on his colleagues from caves in Australian bush. So they have the similar man in Australia as they do in Ecuador. And 2 creators, they wore overalls with broad straps and around their chest. The Minute faction of the treasure from the patio of the Church of Maria Auxiliadora at Sunna, the Minute fraction of the treasure that I have illustrated here is still more minute fraction of the precious objects which rest undisturbed in Juan Moritz's tunnels, an orgy of human history in gold. Can't make this stuff up. There's more to reality than what people know, as I keep saying. If these pictures are genuine, and everything indicates that they are, because no one makes forgeries in gold. At any rate, not on such a large scale. This is the biggest archaeological sensation since the discovery of Troy. There are representations of men with sun's rays about their head, and there are men depicted with star points coming from them. The symbol of the holy power has always been the head, But in these pictures, the head is simultaneously sun or star that points to a new direct connections. Nearby in the Peruvian Andes, Francisco Pizarro, 1478 to 1541, 500 years ago, discovered cave entrances closed with slabs of rock on got a fly bugging me here. Rock on Huascarin, the mountain of the Incas, 22,000 feet high above sea level. So they've discovered cave entrances in Peru, in the Andes. 200 feet below the earth, the scientists made a staggering discovery. At the far end of the caves, which had several stories, they suddenly found themselves confronted with watertight doors made of gigantic slabs of rock. In spite of their tremendous weight, 4 men were able to push the doors open. They pivoted on small stone balls in a bed formed by dripping water. So 200 feet, 2,200 feet up, 200 feet below at 2,000 feet up, they found these gigantic watertight doors, vast tunnels, which would leave even modern underground construction green with envy, began behind the 6 doors. These tunnels led straight down the coast, at times at a slope of 14%. The floor is covered with stone slabs that have been pitted and grooved to make them slip-proof. It is as if an adventure even today to penetrate these 55 to 65 mile long transport tunnels in the direction of the coast and finally reach a spot 80 feet below sea level. Imagine the difficulties that must have been involved in the 14th or 15th century in transporting goods. So can you just imagine this? You're 22,000 feet up. I'm here in North Carolina in the mountains at about 3,000 feet. 22,000 feet up in the Andes, and you go 200 feet down in the ground. 4 gigantic watertight doors that can be opened with a couple of men pushing them because there's water dripping on the balls of the doors that were hand carved to make them move. Then once you get inside these gigantic caverns, all handmade, and the slope goes down 14% all the way down to the coast, the Pacific coast, and under the ocean, and apparently a tunnel to an island offshore. Now my question is, I beg to ask, why did they build this? Why the watertight doors? And I think I have an answer. My theory. So let's make a little detour from this book and see what I'm thinking. Well, we all know, most people, about the Great Flood. And most people know there's just something weird going on in the world with FEMA camps, like prisons set up all over the United States. The police armed up like German stormtroopers. It's like somebody's preparing for a disaster. And then the global warming. And last year, the Great Lakes, some of them were frozen over, which hasn't been recorded in a long time in history. So what's up? So over the world in Alaska, the Himalayas, Iceland, different places, they took core samples. And they could tell when a period got cold and when it was warm. You see those spikes there? Those are a big change. And what's interesting on this side here, see that spike going towards the top? That's today. Now you notice when that spike gets up and up and up and previously here, because once it reaches a peak, it crashes. So that's the temperature differential. And the separation seems to be about 1,000 years apart. 100,000 years. So we are apparently might be getting ready to experience something that hasn't happened for 100,000 years ago, according to the core samples. All right, I know what you're saying. Well, that's just one. Here's one that helps out something a little bit more closer. You see those peaks? That's when things got warm. And once they get to a particular warming temperature, it falls off a cliff. So what causes the jet streams and not the jet streams, but the jet streams also, but the streams, the currents in the ocean, going from the warm water to the cool water, just like a heater in your house, hold your hand over it and the heat rises. So the cold water in the equator travels towards, the warm water in the equator travels towards the cold water in the poles, and it creates a ocean stream. Once something gets warm enough, it falls off a cliff because the current stops, and then everything gets frozen. The warm water doesn't go north. So it shows here at a couple of these peak periods. There was the medieval period when it had a warming, the Roman warming, and it looks like then they had a little ice age here on the bottom. So we came out of a little ice age and we're getting warm again, like the stock market when it goes up and up and up, then it crashes. So I'm just saying, with these charts, do the powers that be know something that we don't know? Is the data factual? Can this be relied on? And you can go on the internet and just put in their ice core samples and images and you'll find this website. But it certainly looks like there's this periodic blip that creates a havoc change. Now I'm also wondering, because they're talking about a pole shift. And in the Bible it says the sun will rise in the west where it was rising in the east, of course. What I'm trying to say is, something's up. In Ecuador, they built those caverns, obviously for people to survive. If you read about the Hopi Indians, and I have the book, there was a cataclysmic event coming, and some kind of entities knew it was coming, and assisted the Hopis to go underground in caverns and caves there. And over in Europe, in Greece, and many places of the world, there have been great caverns discovered underground that were equipped for people to survive what? A pole shift? An ice age? Something natural? Then we have these transmitters that the government has all over the world. They're called HARP. See them? And they're gigantic 40 acres of antennas, like a microwave oven, aimed at the sky, and they can, and even here in North Carolina, I take pictures and I can see all the ripples in the sky, which appears to me to be electromagnetic radiation. So they can microwave a city, and the people won't even know it, but they will have vibrations aimed at them that will make them irritated and change their mood and make them vicious and angry and riotous. You know, like pushing somebody just a little bit too far and pushing and finally they explode. They can, with these transmitters, they can do that. And then of course we have sky spraying like nobody's business everywhere. And again, I'm trying to say, why did they build those watertight doors from the 22,000 feet up with a nice little plane going down to the coast under the tunnel, apparently for lots of people? Why are they spraying us like bugs every day? Something's not right. Here's another good picture to show you about the normal thousands of years history of climate change. People did not cause climate change. Ice core samples for thousands of years do not lie. And it even has here, it tells you the Hebrews' exodus from Egypt, right where my thumb is pointing, right here, is at that peak period. And then the Roman Empire was at this peak period. And then the El Chichen, Mexico, the Viking explorations reached at this period. And then, and now we're here. So we're getting to one of these interesting periods where major events happen. We just exited the mini ice age, right where my finger is. They had larger ice ages before. So there was a large ice age here, medium, little less, little less. Now, is the cycle about to give us another huge one, is my question. Because notice this one is larger, smaller, larger, smaller. Do they know something we don't know? How accurate are these charts? Did the scientists have it right? Did they give us the right information? 11,500 years ago was the last ice age, they say on these things. And then, so, you know, you have to wonder about history. Here's what they look like. They took these core samples. And when there's a nice summer, of course, there's more pollen in the air and other chemicals in the fall that blow on the ice. And then when there isn't a nice summer, there won't be a lot of pollen. So those are some of the tools that they can use. Thousands of years. Here, look how the drastic changes are. All right, I believe we have so they're blaming it on mankind so they can spend tons of money trying to battle it. And what do they do with all that money trying to battle global warming, global cooling, climate change? What do they do with that? What have they done with that money? You're not going to like the answer. Underground bases and tunnels today, like somebody did years ago, that worshiped the sun. The Freemasonic lodges, Illuminati, Rosicrucians, all the other occultic people are talking to entities on the other side. Also, sun worshippers like these people. If you look at the dollar bill behind the all-seeing eye horse, you'll see the blazing sun. Go look at the Sun Bank and Shell gas station and a lot of corporate logos, you'll see the shining rays. 1% of the people of the world own about 95% of everything, and they seem to be staffing up the military like SWAT teams and building underground cities, and buying bullets, and even shipping guillotines to army bases. What's about to happen? Bases and tunnels, what is the government trying to hide? So I thought I'd read a little bit of this. And just point out things aren't what people seem. Alright, this would be Richard Sonder, PhD, smarter guy than me. I will also discuss at some length planning documents. Only my highlighted stuff I read. I don't read the whole book. Go online and find it. New bookstores or used book sites, $5, $10. Construction and operation of underground bases and tunnel systems. These planning documents are real, and they were written over a 25-year period beginning in the late 1950s. Early 1970s he wrote this book. 1840 to 1940, they were heavily into the occultic seances and psychic research, talking to entities on the other side, occultic stuff, planning the demise of the Christian church and religion and other religions, as said in the Freemasons handbooks that I have reviewed. So anyways, 25 years ago, when they started the propaganda about overpopulation, they were writing this plan beginning in the late 1950s to start building underground bases costing billions of dollars of taxpayers' money What are they planning for? One of the most, this is page 22, one of the most prominent names in the early history of U.S. government planning for underground bases is the Project RAND. The RAND Corporation became operational in November 1948, right after World War II. It actually grew out of the U.S. Air Force Project RAND, which was established in '46 to carry out long-range research projects of interest to the Air Force. Remember, the Air Force and CIA were heavily into the remote viewing. That's training young men to sit in chairs like aircraft cockpit chairs, or where you get your hair cut chairs, barber chairs, and whether drugs or some kind of electronic devices or meditation, you would go into a meditative state or a trance, and you would leave your body and spy on the enemy. Air Force, Army, all the military people were into that around the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, big time, and abducting thousands and thousands of young boys particularly, and apparently mind controlling them. There's something more going on in the world. That's my point to these videos. I read these books and my brain puts the parts of the puzzle together as a theory. Right or wrong, they're doing this. Right or wrong, that gold is there, and those doors were there in the Andes, and all that construction. Right or wrong, the Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma book is seriously into the occult and spiritual communication with the Swedenborg religion, which George Bush's great-great-grandfather was heavily into it and wanting to see the Jews get a sovereign state of Israel 200 years ago. So everything that's been going on in our world, behind the scenes, stuff has been going on. And over there now, where they're really killing lots of Arabs in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and everywhere, and apparently now France today wants to go back into Libya. Meanwhile, the archaeologists are digging like dogs digging like for a bone all over the deserts, and they have satellite equipment, I guess that can be like an X-ray, and they're looking for something. Me wonders, what are they looking for in the desert? What secret instructions? What technology? What communication with the gods? The mission of the RAND Corporation was to work on the cutting-edge problems in the realms of engineering, economics, mathematics, physics, and social sciences. Alright, page 24. One such facility, little unknown, is the operation near Albuquerque, New Mexico. The site is referred to as Kirtland Munitions Storage Complex by the Air Force, which for years would not comment on what was there. Through speculation was rampant. The complex was a nuclear weapons storage area. These are underground cities. In 1949, the Air Force dug into one of the ridges of the foothills of the Manzanzo Mountains near Albuquerque and began to fill it with tunnels and caverns. It's rumored, you can go on the internet, check it all out. There's all kinds of books written and all kinds of whistleblowers. But they've been tractor trailers driving in these secret cities, loading them up with food and supplies. Why? 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 Pole shift? Ice age? This was a compartmentalization of the most literal kind, intended to ensure that not even the miners who built the underground base would be familiar with its complete layout. So when they were building these things that were underground chambers 40 feet wide, 30 feet high, 100 feet long, these are small in compared to the ones that were down there in Ecuador and Peru. So the technology and the entities that did that could make much larger ones. In 1989, now see, this is pretty recent, the Air Force began construction of a second underground facility within the site of the Manzanzo base. So this is like 1990, in 2014. Throughout the last 25 years, at a fevered rate, they've been doing this stuff and passing legislation and causing fake events like 9/11 to start invading the Middle East and depopulating it by killing everybody, in my opinion. The Ukraine Russia, apparently Putin, wouldn't cooperate with the Syrian thing. And months later, look what happened in the Ukraine. The new facility was completed in June 1992 and also on land. Controlled by Air Force Base. The existence of this facility raises many questions. Again, another page, 29. The most logical is, are there other tunnels and other high security suites and vaults and rooms deep under Los Alamos? And in light of persistent rumors of captive entities, aliens, held hostage at Los Alamos, was this a high-security, climate-controlled, plumbing-equipped suite of vaults really dug into the mesa as a storage site for nuclear materials, or was it just a cover story? Was this complex instead actually intended as a high-security jail for alien prisoners held against their will, incommunicado, behind thick steel doors, deep underground? Certainly the time frame, 1948 to 1949, is suggestive, since this is the approximate time within when possibly more, UFOs were rumored to have crashed and have been retrieved along with some of the occupants by the U.S. military. Roswell comes to mind. I read a couple books on that. We're going to go over that. I'm just saying, something's not right in the world. Within the last couple years of secret underground installation, a secret underground installation has allegedly been covertly constructed near Oakland Grade, not far from Napa, California. Aerial photographs of the entrance to the supposed underground facility, located in rugged mountainous terrain, show large cement bunkers with large concrete doors. Large doors there in Peru. A new road, freshly graded. There are also 8 to 10 microwave dishes pointing to the sky, evidently providing satellite communication links. Does history repeat itself? Apparently the weather repeats itself. Pole shift or whatever the cause. The decision was lent extra force by the destructive power of nuclear weapons, which made previous installations obsolete. Specifically, one of the reports in this series issued in 1961 says, vital government installations have been placed underground, as exemplified by the Ritchie Project. The Ritchie Project is a large underground military facility in the Maryland-Pennsylvania border, which is discussed in some detail later in this report. The interesting thing here is that already in 1961, in a publicly available document, explicit reference is made to governmental installations already have been placed underground. Examples of the sorts of facilities the military was discussing placing underground were communication centers, fortification, air raid shelters, staff headquarters, offices, research facilities, shops, factories, storage areas, hospital kitchens, laboratories, sleeping areas to be used for personnel stationed underground. Page 34. There's going to be something explosive coming up next. Hang on. In a 3-volume report issued in June-July of 1964 entitled Feasibility of Constructing Large Underground Cavities, the Army Corps of Engineers set out 12 sites across the country. See illustration 8, where calculated 600 feet diameter cavities could be excavated up to 4,000 feet underground. Alright, so anyways, to make the story short, there's some of the places. Underground cities all over the United States. Thousands and thousands of people. So if the big event happens, do you have a ticket? Methinks you don't. And on the surface, the police will have to control the rioting citizens. Just a theory. I'm not the one that's preparing for this. You just got to pay attention to the news, and somebody's preparing for something. Yuma County, Arizona is a big site. Mojave County, Arizona. Uno County, California. Mesa and Montrose Counties, Colorado. Nevada, Colorado, Utah, Texas, Arizona. Alabama, Nebraska, Kansas, and Georgia. When asked about the local underground installation, a person who gave directions to these facilities said that Station B is believed to be a computing and communication facility. Anyways, the big AT&T microwave tower is located. He then added, but no one knows for sure what goes on at Station A. Unfortunately, if the actions of the guard on Station A when I visited were any indication, the Army does not want anyone to know. This would have been Richard Saunders. I attempted to snap a photo at the gate from the road on public property. The guard sprang into action, bounded toward me, waving his arms angrily, shouting no. Methinks that us citizens are in the dark about something. Somewhat taken aback at his reaction, which seemed all out of proportion to an innocent snapshot of a government facility, I asked him, why not? I'm on a public right-of-way. He replied even more forcibly, because I said so. That's the attitude the government seems to be doing right now, that people do not have rights, should not be speaking up, and shut up and do what you're told. If the Air Force and Army are going underground, can the Navy be far behind? Why is everybody going underground? Alright, the Navy runs a secret electronics facility near the isolated community in Sugar Grove, West Virginia, on the Virginia-West Virginia line. The purpose of the installation, which works out a 2-story underground operations center, is to spy on microwave communication traffic for the National Security Agency, NSA. This illegal and unconstitutional activity is a serious military violation of civil liberties, as set forth in the Bill of Rights. I think they've suspended our constitutional rights because it seems like they're not adhering to them. But if the government doesn't care very much about your rights to privacy, it certainly cares a lot less about its own rights to secrecy, especially when it comes to fighting a war, in particular the big one. Are they planning on World War III? Like Albert Pike wrote in 1860-70, when the guy who wrote the Freemasonry Bible book, Morals and Dogma. And Albert Pike wrote to a friend in Europe in the late 1800s that 3 world wars were needed, and he said who they were going to be between and why, and he was correct on World War I and World War II, and apparently, the way the show is going now, he's correct on World War III. In an article in the U.S. News and World Report stated that the Federal Emergency Management Agency and the Pentagon administer approximately 50 secret underground command posts around the country where the president might flee in the event of nuclear war. Page 43. Anyways, the horrible part of the story is it seems that these underground cities, they've set up a second government, not elected officials. There are other secret underground government command facilities. Many of them are operated by FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. FEMA usually pops up in the news as a lead federal agency charged with hurricanes or flood relief efforts, but FEMA has another side as well, a secret underground side. Mount Weather, Bluemont, Virginia, the hub of the FEMA subterranean network, is located in Mount Weather near a small town of Bluemont in northern Virginia. Although it is the headquarters of FEMA's far-flung underground empire, does not appear on the agency's published budget. Speaking off the record, in the mid-1970s, pay attention to this and we're done. Government officials stated that in fact Mount Weather houses a resident backup government. Many federal departments and agencies are represented there, including the Departments of Agriculture, Commerce, HUD, Interior, Labor, State Transportation, and the Treasury, and agencies such as FEMA, the Office of the President, the U.S. Postal Service, the Federal Communications Commissioner and Federal Reserve Selective Service, and Federal Power Commission, page 50, Civil Service Commission, and others. These covert secretaries are said to keep their positions over the course of more than one administration and their terms not being limited by the presidential election cycles that govern the terms of office of their Washington counterparts. So these are permanent employees. Who gets these jobs? These are sensational allegations, but if they are true, then the political news we are fed in the mainstream media must be fictional to some unknown degree, and the system governing us is controlled to that same unknown degree by agencies and officials who work in great secrecy, literally underground and totally unaccountable to the citizens of the United States. A thought crossed my mind. I know you knew I would say that because I'm always thinking. But if, you know, with the Obama administration and the Bush administration, a large portion, greater than 75%, maybe 90%, I don't know, of their support staff were these dual citizens of Israel and the United States. Now I'm wondering, who gets these jobs in these underground facilities that really are running our world? And if you pay attention to what's going on the surface here, while they're underground, and the news today said that the Army has to prepare to start taking actions in the U.S. mega cities to, I guess, fight against or imprison, I guess, in the city, the American people. It just makes me wonder, who's in charge of the planet, and where their allegiances lie? And it surely seems like in the Middle East and in Ukraine, that in the United States there seems to be a bad day coming. So we have all these underground cities with this second government probably running the first government. All the politicians we see in the news are just distractions and entertainment to keep people thinking there's something normal going on, when that could be the last thing that's true. I don't know. But I read, and I see the lies. We know that mankind didn't create global warming, had nothing to do with anything. They got ice core data. We know that there are entities. That's what it looks like, how they can tell what's happening during the different periods. They're out there in the frozen weather taking these ice core samples. Then they're telling the people this is going on, but the planet's going to heat up. And apparently, to save us from the heating up, forgot that. There he goes. To save us from that heating up, they say that's why they're doing this. Sky spraying our sky. I don't believe it. Anybody who believes the news, sorry about that, but my day job calls. So anyways, I took you on a crazy trip to reality. Underground facilities, a second government, not answerable to the people, running our world. Apparently some kind of aliens or something in South America, Ecuador. Tons of gold down there in those mountains. And I'm not going to do more of this book, but Erich Von Daniken, he visits many other places all over the world and has found the same symbols which the Illuminati use, Freemasons in the book, Morals and Dogma, the sun god and all that stuff, the snakes. So it's a common theme. There's something behind the scenes. And it seems like they're preparing for something. And all that propaganda for global warming, when they know that's not the case. They're lying. So I just thought I'd finish this video up with a little bit more insanity. So last year, we all know that Graham these Democrats are a little lunatics. I think he's a Democrat, yeah. Senator Lindsey Graham says that he's convinced that the Syrian President Assad used chemical weapons on his people. Graham nukes in the hands of terrorists could result in bomb coming to Charleston Harbor. This would be in September 3rd, 2013. That's what he said. Here's where it gets crazy. December 3rd, apparently, with nobody signing for them, several nukes were moved to South Carolina. At the same time that Graham said there could be an explosion in Charleston Harbor. The same day, in the news, high-level source confirms secret nuclear warheads were transferred to South Carolina. That's what it says here. So what are they doing? What have they attempted to do that they couldn't pull off? Then G20, this is September 6, 2013. Wow, 3 days later. Obama calls Putin a jackass. Hopes for a positive G20 summit crumbled today as President Obama blurted to Russians Vladimir Putin at a joint press appearance, "Everyone here thinks you're a jackass." That's not enough for insanity. I don't know what is. The press corps appeared stunned by the uncharacteristic outburst from Mr. Obama, who then unleashed a 10-minute tirade at the stone-faced Russian president. "Look, I'm not just talking about Snowden in Syria," Mr. Obama said. "What about Pussy Riot?" That would be that band, I guess, over there, rock and roll. "What about your anti-gay laws?" Well, anyways, I don't know about anybody else, but this $1 billion propaganda spent in the USA to promote gay marriage, bisexuality, drag queens, transvestites, and adultery. And, of course, we got Conchita Wurst. First names mean pussy, last name means sausage, winning the Eurovision, the American Idol type program, in Europe. Singing the song Phoenix Rising, which is a biblical thing, returning from the ashes, which is part of the sun god religion. And with the words, "You can't stop us." And then you got Mr. Obama here calling him a jackass. And what about the Pussy Riot? What about your anti-gay laws? Total jackass moves, my friend. As Mr. Putin's narrowed his eyes in frosty silence, Mr. Obama seemed to warm to this topic. "If you think I'm the only one who feels this way, you're kidding yourself." Mr. Obama jabbing his finger in the direction of the Russian president's face. "Ask Mr. Angela Merkel. Ask David Cameron. Ask the Turkish guy. Every one of them think you're a dick." That's what he said. Shortly after Mr. Obama's volcanic performance, Mr. Putin released a terse official statement reading, "I should be afraid of the skinny man? I wrestle bears." After one day of meetings, the G20 nations voted unanimously on a resolution that said that maybe everyone should just go home. So again, like I said, with all the craziness going on in the world, with the satanic influence, TV programming like Modern Family, I've watched it, it's entertainment, but it has the acceptance of alternate lifestyles forced on people. Cartoons that people's kids watch is this propaganda, satanic, forced on kids, mind-controlling kids. And then homelessness and unemployment spreading, and the government gearing up for some kind of battle with the people, like SS troopers from Germany with riot gear like in Ferguson recently, and tanks in our cities, gigantic militarized SWAT tanks, and worse, the ones they had in Iraq Iraq to fend off bombs and all that. Why do we need that in the USA cities? Is something about to happen? Why the underground bases and the whole secret government set in place? Why would Obama call Putin a jackass and all that others accusations and slander and insults? So there you have it, some more bizarre stuff, and I thought this video was apropos, telling us that the world's not what we seem and some kind of entities thousands of years ago. And then we got all the news on the alien sightings and the videos I've been doing, and alien UFO disclosure, Dr. Stephen Greer having a puja Sanskrit ceremony in the desert. It's an incantation sort of thing to bring forth spiritual aliens from the sky. A lot of stuff doesn't make sense. And the mainstream media and the press releases saying that ISIS is going to attack the United States, while in the meantime they leave the borders wide open down there in Mexico and Texas. So they're preparing the people for something. They're deceiving the people for something. They don't have to crash the dollar. The whole thing is bogus. I mean, if the trillionaire billionaires can't get their money, too bad. But the regular whole United States could operate quite well on the money that's in circulation. Money paid to employers pay their people. Those people buy groceries. Everybody pays their rent, pays their electric bill, and the whole cycle just continues to churn unless they verbally say they crash it. And just that verbalization thing they put on TV. So one moment the dollar is worth $1, and because they say so, the next moment it's not worth anything. The people should not believe them and don't accept that, and we can continue our own reality and try to take back our country from the secret underground governments and find out what is going on with this Vatican, the Pope there meeting with the Israeli Perez recently, 3 times in the last couple months, talking about a united nations for one religion. Something doesn't make sense. So I keep reading books, and this is video number 48. I hope all this made some sense. And the next one's 49 and 50, and I'll be done for a while. But I wonder if I'll stop. Maybe I'll do something new and creative. So thank you for watching my videos. Wake up. Be alert. Stock up on some groceries. This is the, what is today? The 9th of September. So 2 days is 9/11. I saw a little alert on the internet saying, pay attention, stock up a little bit. Who knows? God help us all, I pray.